Yeah. Hello, my name is Jashanpreet Kaur,
And my name is Precious Nashipai.
and welcome to our presentation on the Early Years Learning Framework, where I will introduce the EYLF, explore its principles and practices, and I will show how it shapes early childhood education in Australia. So, we can start with the first slide. In the very first slide, we can discuss about the early years learning framework or EYLF refers to. The EYLF is Australia's national framework that guides early childhood educators in supporting the learning and development of children from birth to 5 years old. It is built around three fundamental concepts, which is belonging, being, and becoming, which capture the essence of early childhood and shape how children engage with the world around them. These three words play a very significant role in the early years framework, and it also have a very deep meaning with the diversity and multicultural backgrounds in all over Australia. The framework is important because it ensures a consistent and high quality standard of education across all early childhood services from long daycare to kindergarten, and it helps educators to plan, teach, and assess children's learning in a structured yet flexible way. Aligning with the national quality standard, key features of the EYLF include a strong child centered approach and the flexibility to meet diverse cultural and individual needs. Being grounded in evidence based research on early childhood development, we can have a look on the image attached to this slide, illustrating the overlap between belonging, being, and becoming. The very first column of the which is green color represents learning outcomes, and we can start from the very first, which is the principles from practices to learning outcomes. The principles are learning respectful and reciprocal relationships and partnerships with the children and the parents as an educator. And in the practices, there is holistic, integrated, and interconnected approaches within the children and the framework. And the learning outcome says the outline from the fundamental activity around the early years learning framework. Now we can go to the next slide. In this slide, we can subsequently consider the five core principles of the early years learning framework. First, we represent secure, respectful, and reciprocal relationships are essential, where children thrive when they feel safe, valued, and strong relationships support their emotional and cognitive development. In the second, the framework emphasizes partnerships with families. Educators work closely with parents and carers to understand children's backgrounds, interests, and needs, creating a more holistic learning environment. In the third, maintaining high expectations and equity ensures every child is supported to reach their potential, regardless of their background or abilities. As an educator, it's our responsibility to respect each culture and their multicultural background with their diversity, and it's our duty or responsibility to know about each culture which exists all over Australia. And we can say, for example, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, the Muslim community, and the Indian community, and there are various other communities which exist in Australia. So, as an educator, we can have a lot of children from different backgrounds. So, we ensure them that we respect their diversity, their culture, And also we can have a very nice event like Harmony Day, so that we can come together to celebrate every culture and diversity. And in the fourth, respect for diversity is crucial. Educators acknowledge and celebrate differences in culture, language, traditions, and family structures. Lastly, ongoing learning and reflective practice require educators to continuously reflect on and improve their teaching practices, remaining open to change and growth. Each principle underpins the way we work with young children, ensuring we foster inclusive, supportive, and enriching learning environments. And we can go to the next slide. In this slide, the early years learning framework plays a powerful role in shaping an educator's professional identity. Firstly, it defines the ethical practice by promoting fairness, respect, and responsibility, and also utilizes the five components, which is observe, assess, plan, implement, and evaluate. This is the planning cycle we use as an educator in the long day care to tell kindergartens to make sure we are having a structured and well represented plan for children, how we can help them, or also we can how we can ensure them to they are learning their every aspect in the period of kindergarten and through the activities and play. These are the fundamental steps we can take as an educator during the period of learning, and it also improves the practice for inclusive curriculum development. And in the slide, there is a picture attached which is representing the planning cycle. Now we can go to the next slide. This slide explains about the educator's professional identity. The early years learning framework, it plays a very significant role in building a educator's professional identity. Firstly, it defines ethical practice by promoting fairness, respect, and responsibility. Every interaction with children, families, and colleagues is guided by these ethical standards. We can also consider the national quality standards while having conversation with the families, their parents, and the carers, helping to create a safe and inclusive environment. Secondly, the EYLF informs daily decisions regardless of whether we are planning activities, engaging in teaching, or assessing learning outcomes. All actions are aligned with EYLF principles, ensuring consistency and a strong focus on holistic child development. In the holistic child development, we can focus on the very important five domains for the children from physical to cognitive development. Thirdly, EYLF builds professionalism in the sector. It clearly outlines expectations for educator roles, promoting lifelong learning and active advocacy for children's right and well-being. By embedding these elements into everyday practice, the EYLF helps educators not only teach effectively but also grow in reflective, ethical, and highly professional members of the early childhood education community. And now we can go to the next slide. In this slide, we are representing a case study which is embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. In this case study, um, we explore case study is represented. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives are meaningfully embedded into the early years curriculum using the Khori curriculum approach. The key principle is to weave culture into daily practice across all plays rather than isolating it to cultural corners or only celebrating it during the events like NAIDOC week, which is called NADHOC week. A strong example of this is the Bush Tucker Play Space, where children engage with indigenous foods through sensory and play based activities. This allows children to develop an authentic connection to Aboriginal culture through exploration and inquiry, which is both respectful and deeply educational. The impact of this practice is significant as it helps build children's cultural competence from a young age, supports national reconciliation efforts, and directly aligns with the EYLF focus on respect, diversity, and inclusion. This case study reminds us that embedding indigenous perspectives must be intentional, authentic, and ongoing. The pictures added to this case study are representing the Aboriginal and indigenous culture. Now we can go to the next slide.
Okay, so this is Precious speaking, and the next slide is how the EYLF guides the professional identity, ethical conduct, and decision-making processes of early teachers in Australia. So the EYLF articulates and upholds the professional identity of early childhood teachers by describing the values, principles, and practices that underpin high quality early learning. So educators are acknowledged as co-workers, researchers, and advocates who are engaged in children's learning, well-being, and holistic development. Basically, um, professionalism in early childhood encourages reflective practice to share to shape identity and guide ethical actions. So the next slide. Ethical conduct by the EYLF. So the EYLF is complemented by the Early Childhood Australia ECA Code of Ethics, which also supports the EYLF in guiding educators towards being ethical practitioners in their relationships with the children, families, and also each other. So here, the EYLF basically works in partnership with the Early Childhood Australia Code of Ethics, and they support educators in being ethical practitioners in all relationships with children, families, and even colleagues. Key ethical responsibilities that teachers should have are include respect, children's rights and their dignity, show integrity in professional decisions. And a good example of this would be when a family shares to the teacher that the entire family, including the child, are fasting up to a certain time due to religious purposes or cultural reasons, then the educator respects this by adjusting the child's involvement in food related activities and ensure that the child doesn't feel excluded by showing cultural awareness and understanding ethical decision making. Reflective and informed decision making. So, 5 EYLF principles, which include secure, respectful relationships, partnerships with families, high expectations and equity, respect for diversity, and ongoing reflective practice, supports ethical and socially inclusive teaching. And these principles help educators work through difficult circumstances, with difficult situations that they're put in with compassion and professionalism, always keeping it professional. Um, so a good example of this would be um, when an educator collaborates with a child's family to learn more about their home language and includes these certain words, the greetings in that language in the classroom with other students, demonstrating respect for diversity and partnership with families. And this is very important because it also lets in the children know, creates awareness of other cultures, therefore reducing the rate of discrimination because they are aware and they don't find it different. So principles as foundations for practice. So the EYLF is composed of a set of teaching practices rooted in ethical and professional disposition. Among these practices include the play-based learning, intentional teaching, and inclusive creative environments. So these are not just approaches, but an investment in rich learning experiences that nurture the child holistically. So the purpose of these practices is not just teaching methods. This aim to nurture the whole world, the child socially, emotionally, cognitively, and culturally. So an example of this would be an educator collaborates with a child's family to learn, more about where they come from, and this just makes the whole environment in the classroom positive for including for him, for the teacher itself, herself, and also for the child. So the practices that reflect professional values. So the use of documentation, planning cycles, and observation allows teachers to ensure that the children are engaged, they are supported, and challenged in their learning. And integrating such practices into everyday life not only demonstrates commitment to child development and lifelong learning, but it also supports teachers themselves in cultivating the same among their students and each other. So a good example would be an educator sets up a play-based learning experience around recycling after noticing children's curiosity about rubbish collection. This reflects intentional teaching and responsiveness to child's interest, which is very important. And another slide is professional growth and continuous learning. So ongoing learning for educators is also encouraged in the EYLF as well as children. It has a role in nurturing a professional learning culture that emphasizes collaboration, inquiry, and reflective conversation. Early childhood teachers are encouraged to critically reflect on their um, reflect on their own practice and seek feedback while also pursuing professional learning. This approach is very important because it helps educators respond to change differently, remaining up to date with the research and, things that happen in the classroom and just, changes that happen in the world and continuously improving outcomes for the children and families they serve, bettering their professionalism. An example would be a teacher in today's age attending a workshop on autism inclusion. An educator shares new strategies with the team and adjusts their teaching to better support neurodiverse learners, showing commitment to ongoing learning. Another example would be showing um, giving children the opportunity to, express themselves however they would like, whether they, bring to, whether they tell the class that they have, two moms, just making them feel inclusive. Teachers can take a class on this just to make themselves aware. And these are links to the video. So there's one here. Oh, oops, sorry, which we will play at the end. And the last bit is the conclusion. So the EYLF shapes the professional identity, ethics, and practice of early childhood educators across Australia, embedding principles, practices, and learning outcomes ensures an inclusive, high quality, and cultural safe education. Real world application like integrating Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders perspectives highlights the EYLF impact on daily teaching and decision making. Um, thank you, and we will now just show the video. Sorry. Yeah. Oops.